Welcome, everybody, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I'm joined this week by a very special guest. Feels like a coworker of mine in a weird way, but also like, yeah, it's I don't know. It's cool that you've been a part of Spot On Solutions Get Found First. Me and you actually kind of started working here about the same time. So it's felt like we've
within a week or two.
Yeah, within a week or two, and kind of grown up within the company together, and it's been fun. But joined by Shane Campbell, owner operator of People First HR.
Yes.
Shane, thanks for coming on the podcast.
You bet. Thanks for having me. It's great.
Awesome. Shane, you have kind of been given the unofficial title here in the office as our Toby, for better or for worse, right? You are our human resources consultant, representative, manager, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that has been something you've been doing for quite a while now, right? How many years have you been doing HR?
Okay, so HR in general, probably about 12.
That's
years
awesome.
Total.
Okay.
Started out actually more on the training side with the company and training and development, and then kind of branched out and became an HR director for a company of about 4,000 employees, and then did a couple other things with a couple other businesses as their HR manager, and then doing this consulting thing on my own, and I love it.
Yeah,
it's been the best decision I've ever made.
That's awesome. It seems like quite the leap to go from being an HR director for 4,000 employees to now doing it on your own. But let's talk a little bit about your career and how you kind of got to where you are today, with 12 years of experience with regards to HR. But I guess, how did you first get involved in human resources? What drew you towards human resources, and why 12 years later are you still doing it? Why didn't after the first...
What possessed me to keep
What possessed you to keep going? Why didn't after the first month you're like, I can't believe I'm still doing this?
Yeah, I did wonder after the first month. I promise you that. I wondered if I made the right life choice. But so really what got me into it, I was the training manager for this company, 4,000 employees, like I told you. And we had a benefits department, we had a training department, we had a risk management department. Believe it or not, we didn't have a full-scale HR department.
Oh, really? Okay.
So we just kind of kept growing, and we never took a step back and said, we probably ought to bring all these things together. And so I proposed it to the company and said, well, at least wrap some of those departments together in HR, and we did. And it was really a great blessing, I think, for me personally and the company. We could focus more on hiring tools and employee relations and coaching and things. So that's kind of how I got into it. Now, why did I stay? Here's the thing. HR looks different depending on the company you're at, the culture. So yes, there are basic principles of HR, right? As far as employment law and training and development and benefits. And so there's certain core elements. But what I found is depending on the industry and the company, HR can look and feel a little bit different. So you say Toby.
Which, if people don't know, it's a reference to the very famous TV show called The Office. They have an HR rep named Toby that is not very well loved by the rest of the employees at the office. No. But he kind of becomes the butt of a lot of jokes.
Yeah, because he's pretty stiff and he's pretty lame to be around. And to be totally honest, some HR managers and departments are like that. There are many. And so that's why it's so funny, because there's an element of truth to it. And that's where I differ, I guess. I personally don't feel that that's the best approach. And so if you look at many companies, it's like people have to go to the HR department. They're like, oh, no, please don't make me go to the HR department, right? It's like you're walking to the principal's office or something.
Yeah.
And so my philosophy from the beginning was, why don't we create a department where people want to come?
Yeah.
They want to come ask questions. They want to talk through things. They trust you as an advisor or a coach.
Yeah.
And they kind of just like you. You're kind of fun to be around, right? Yeah. So that to me is effective HR, when people want to come talk to you. Then you learn all sorts of things.
Yeah. Well, and it's HR stands for human resources. So that's what, at the end of the day, that's what it should be, right? Is that you should be a resource and a guide, a trainer, someone that's going to help me further my career path.
Right. Versus a policy driver, an implementer, and it's like, you need to have policies and such.
Yeah, without question.
And those are important for guidelines and framework and structure, but yeah, you want to be a resource for them to come to you, but also for you to help them get where they want to be, and help the company grow at the same time. So that's that marriage. That's what HR should be doing, and people should want to be there, come and visit.
I gotcha. Okay, so when it comes to HR, I feel like there's so many different paths we can go down, talking about anything from, like you said, benefits to training to all sorts of stuff. Is there, when you worked for a large company like you did, where did you feel, was there a piece of HR that you felt like was the most important for you to get right? I guess obviously you want to do your job well across the board, but did you ever feel like there was something like, okay, I've got to get the benefits right, or I've got, you know what I mean? Was there ever something that you felt like, gosh, I've got to make sure this is always good for the people that work for us?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually.
Yeah.
And so there's certain aspects, foundational pieces that have to be there. Benefits need to be there. We need to offer good benefits. We need to be legally compliant. So those are all important, but to me, they're not the most important, I guess.
Okay.
To me, the most important thing where HR can help guide leaders in a company is to help people feel valued, to help people feel like they belong, that what they do makes a difference, that they're appreciated, that they are able to use their talents and their strengths to help the company grow, and there's a path for them. That's to me is one of the most, if not the most important thing, because if you can get that buy-in, that engagement, that discretionary effort from people, and they feel like they want to be, then the implications are lower turnover, right? You get more productive people, and you just have a better feel, right? You have people that want to be around each other, and really, it doesn't cost a lot to do that. Benefits cost a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They do. 401k, they cost a lot. And there's money that you need to dump into employees, but there's non-monetary things that companies really can do and do well that don't have much of a cost, but it's a feel more than it's a cost. And that goes back to the HR department. It's a feel. How do you feel being in this company? How do you feel being in this department? How do you feel? So if you can kind of get that culture of growth and engagement, and that just people are people and they're valued, that's the most important. And that's what I think is mostly lacking in many companies.
Ah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think for me, totally agree. I think the places that I've worked for that I felt the most valued, obviously I feel, working at Spot On Solutions, I felt that immensely, which has been amazing. But I look back at even like one of my favorite jobs that I had growing up, and it equal parts sucked because it was I moved pipe. I moved irrigation pipe for a farmer here in Snake River, here southeast Idaho.
Yep.
And it sucked. It was 6 days a week during the summers for 4 summers in a row. And it was brutal, and it was 5 a.m. But I felt valued. And he didn't offer me any other benefits besides he paid me to move the pipe. And there was no 401k, there was
nothing glamorous about that.
There was no insurance, there was nothing. It was just, hey, I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars to move this pipe. But I felt valued by him. He cared about me. He cared about what I had going on in the community. He gave me a bonus at the end of the summer if I worked hard. Like he'd come to my football games. He worked with me on my schedules so that I could go to practice or go to camps. Like there was an immense value that I felt from him as an individual. And
you were loyal.
And because of that, I was loyal. I came back every summer until my senior year of high school and moved pipe for him. And it was because I felt valued. Yeah. And like you said, it goes back to like, it doesn't necessarily always have to be benefits and insurance. And those things are obviously important. You got to have them.
Compete.
You got to compete. But at the end of the day, like you got to help people feel valued. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
And can I just say that on that note, so yeah, I'm an HR consultant. I work for several small businesses here in southeast Idaho, right? Blackfoot, Pocatello, in that area. And one of my clients is a client of SOS.
Yeah. It's a restoration company.
Restoration company, Restore Right. So I'm there each week. And they're a company that really gets that. So the owner, Kenyon Martin, I don't know, has he been on here before?
Yeah, been a couple of times.
Has he been on here? So Kenyon's wonderful, and I work with him and handle HR for him. So he's a company or a person, they're a company that kind of gets it, right? So he's always out in the community. He's helping people personally. he cares more about the person really than he does sometimes about the job. Now we need to get the job done and get it done right, but he has that side to him, and that feeling again kind of permeates throughout the company. He has some loyal people that work there, and I think his turnover is probably lower than most. You know, just because, well, that element, you know, is there. So anyway, it's a real principle, and a lot of companies are good at it, and some aren't.
Well, and it probably makes your job easier as a consultant. You can focus on other problems and putting in systems and other things if there's a good culture there. If you have to start from square one and build a positive culture, and try and do it all yourself, right? Like, it's going to be difficult for you to do all of that,
right?
But it's much easier for you to do your job if you go in there and there's a positive work environment and
right.
people care about their employees. Like, it's much easier to be like, okay, hey, let's build upon that and let's put in some systems in place. Let's get you some benefits. Let's work on managing these other things if we have a good culture here.
And it can't be forced, right?
Nope.
So that's the thing. You can't put your values on a wall, or you can't put it in the handbook. You can't just have a employee party once a month and call it that. But it has to be genuine, because employees know that and feel that if it's not. And it can't just be the HR consultant or the HR manager or whomever. So they got to work in tandem with the owner, and the owner has to want that and kind of believe that and feel that and want that for their employees, to see them as people that more than just someone that'll help them kind of get a job done or help them make a profit. And so SOS is another great example of owners who really genuinely do care about their people. I've had many conversations with Katie and Michael and Jess and others, where we're not just talking HR, we're talking about, but how is this going to affect them personally, or let's consider that before we approach them with this. They have a family, and let's talk about that. And so that's important, right? That's just, it's nice to see. So I'm fortunate I get to work with some great clients.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, there's a bunch more questions that I want to go into with regards to just general HR and things that you've seen and trends that are going on in the world right now. But before we kind of go further into that, I wanted to just hit at briefly you getting into HR consulting and starting your own HR company. Obviously, you worked for a really large company with 4,000 employees, and now you've branched out to do it yourself. What was the reason for that? Why did you want to branch out and do it on your own? And what are some differences about doing it on your own than doing it for a large company like that?
Yeah. Well, great question. And sometimes in life, I think you know this, that sometimes you seek after things, you have a plan and you go get it and it works out. And sometimes opportunities just kind of find you.
Yeah.
So mine was more of the latter. So at the time I was an HR manager for a large tech company, and making good money and great benefits and doing pretty well overall. But I had a friend who owned a small business insurance agency, and he just said, hey, so he's like 10 employees, 12 employees, just small. He said, hey Shane, could you just help me with some few HR things? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Because they can't afford an HR person, right? That small. And so I did. I helped him, and he's like, could you just help me with one other thing? And I was like, sure. I said, but in order to do that, we got to do this, and this. And so he's like, could I just hire you to do this very part-time during your lunch break or in the evenings? Or I said, absolutely. And so that's how it happened, honestly. I wasn't seeking it.
Right.
And then he referred me to another small business. Here, these small businesses, especially in East Idaho, they're connected. And so all of a sudden I had all this extra work, or this opportunity to consult for small businesses. But I had a full-time job. And so this is the truth. Now, I'm not embellishing this one bit. I'm going to tell you the truth right now.
Okay,
so I was to the point now where I'm like, I was doing consulting for 15 hours a week, working my other job 40, 45 hours. And then Katie, I met Katie through Kenyon, who was through this other agency that I first started working with, And she's like, I loved what they stood for and where they wanted to go with their training and development. And she's like, what do you think? Would you like to do this? We'd love to have you, And I said, this is all happening so fast. I don't know. We were eating Chinese food.
Oh, man.
And I said, you know what? I can't tell you yes or no. I don't know. And I don't know where to go to, so I'm going to go to the fortune cookie.
No
this
way,
is the true
Shane.
story.
Shane?
I still have the slip of paper. And she's like, oh, and I'm like, I'm serious. Like, come on. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So I opened the fortune cookie and it said something like, success in life and happiness is just around the corner for you or something like that. So I was like,
all right, well.
I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to quit my job. So I quit my job.
Oh my gosh. You quit your job off of fortune cookie.
For fortune cookie. And that's the honest truth. I know that sounds funny, but, and I was excited about this opportunity.
That's the title of this episode. Yeah. Just so you know. Would you quit your job for a fortune cookie with Shane Campbell?
Yeah. So we did, and I'm so glad I did. And because, SOS was a little bit bigger client, it would cause me to spend a day and a half a week, and I had to make a decision. So best decision.
Oh, that's cool.
Best decision.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's an awesome story, and I think, you hit it right on the head. And what ends up happening for a lot of people that start small businesses, right? Like they are working their full-time job, and they get to this point. They get to this crossroads, if you will, where they're like, I've either got to continue to work my full-time job, or I've got to quit and kind of fully dive into my side hustle.
Yeah.
That is going to, maybe eventually turn into something that'll take care of me and my family, right? And we've talked about Kenyon a lot. Kenyon was very, very similar. Working at a large government facility that paid him very well, and started this restoration company on the side, and probably just thought it was going to be a side hustle for a while. And then a few months in was like, oh, I've got a decision to make. I've got to decide, do I want to do this full time? And he made the leap, and is 5 years later has a really successful company. And it's just fascinating to me. I've never started my own business. I'd like to someday, but it's fascinating to me that everybody gets to this point, and I love getting into the psychology of it, and we could spend a whole episode on that. But it's fascinating to me that you made the decision with the fortune cookie.
It really did happen that way, and
I've never heard that story. I'm gonna ask Katie. I'm gonna check your story.
She'll be first to tell you, and I've got that slip of paper because that was important. That was the best Chinese meal I've ever had. Most valuable for sure.
The most valuable fortune cookie ever. Yeah.
So. But you're right. I think so. I don't feel like I really started a business. I really feel like I just transitioned to consult because the work was already there. And,
right.
And they're still my clients, and I've even added a couple more, and I've even kind of turned a few people away just because I kind of wanted to keep it with just me for right now. I want to consult. Yeah. I don't want to be a manager of consultants. So much. Yeah. So it's been fun. But just to get back to the other thing you asked me is what's the difference between like a big company and a small company? I'll tell you the biggest difference, and what really interested me and pushed me to kind of make this decision is in small companies, you're working right with the owner, and you can make decisions real time, and you can implement things real time. In big companies, it's not that way.
It takes years to implement a training game plan or a 90-day training program.
Right. You have an idea. It has to go through all these different, and then they have different ideas. And like that government job you were talking about that Kim is working with. So I imagine that things move slow and you just can't implement things, and they have structure and order and boxes that people need to fit in. I don't love that. Right.
Yeah.
I think it's just more nimble. So that's probably the biggest difference and benefit.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. I wanted to, there's so many questions that I have with regards to HR that I want to get to at least a few of those, but that was a big one for me. Was like why make the leap? Why make the jump? And what are the kind of the main differences? And I totally agree. Like, I mean, you've been helping out at SOS and GFF for a while now, but you guys were able to implement a training plan fairly quickly. A lot of the pieces were already there thanks to Jess and Katie, but like you guys were able to really implement a training plan fairly quickly. And it's because, like you meet with the CEO and talk with the CEO every day.
Yeah.
And can have conversations with her and sit down and be like, hey, I want to do this. Let's do it. And within a week or two, you can have it implemented and ready to rock.
Right.
And it's awesome.
Right. And the owners trust you as a consultant, right? Yeah. They're like, well, you tell me what you think, so I'll share, and together we'll work on something. They're like, let's roll, let's get her done.
There's not 6 layers of separation between you and the people that make the decisions. And
no, it's great. It's refreshing.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Well, I want to, in jest, I asked some of my coworkers here before we jumped in, like, what are some questions I need to ask Shane about HR?
No sexual harassment questions. You said, right? None of those.
That's what. Oh, that takes off.
I want to give you my worst.
That takes 17 of my 20 questions. No. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to ask, first and foremost, just because I think it's the culture and the climate that we have going on today, what are some challenges that you've seen? I forgot what I wanted to look it up before I jumped on the episode, but is it the Great Recession or it's not the Great Recession. They're calling it like, oh, sorry, here's what it is. The Great Resignation.
Yeah.
So many people, the recession was a bad word. The Great Resignation. So many people these days, especially within the last 2 years, dealing with the COVID pandemic and everything that came with that, have quit their jobs and have either switched to a different job or have taken their side hustle, to the point where it's their full time. So many employers are dealing with people quitting and resigning.
Right.
What is something that you think as an HR manager, as an HR consultant, what are some recommendations that you could give to employers to try and mitigate some of those issues, right? Like, what recommendations would you give to an employer that comes to you and says, I cannot keep employees. My turnover rate is so high. What would you tell an employer that has problems with that?
Yeah, it is a challenge. It's real, and it's varied by employer or by industry. So with the industry you're in affects that, right? If you're in the service industry, it's a little bit more challenging. But I think I'm going to go back to what I said are the most important aspects of HR.
Culture.
Really are the most important aspects of an organization. Like it is the feel. It's how they feel about working there and how they feel. Do they feel like they're part of something? Do they feel like they're integral? Do they feel like they're valued? Now, look, with the pandemic, that increased work from home, and that totally changed the dynamic of employer-employee relationship and kind of what happens, and people got used to that. And so when employers are trying to kind of bring that back into the office, employees are like, I don't have to get up and do my hair and drive to work, and I could watch Netflix if it's slow. And so they got used to kind of they're thinking that's the norm, that's the way we do things, when reality was that was a temporary solution for many companies, and they even voiced that. But it's almost like employees feel like things are being taken away now, even though that was kind of a temporary fix to the situation. So that's why many of them are like, forget you, and then they think they can go somewhere else. Now, here's the reality of it, though. It's going to swing back.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to swing back. And so those people who are resigning, I'll just go do this, they're going to need, inflation is so high, they can't just leave unless they have a job lined up. And some of them are finding out that that's not as easy anymore because during the pandemic, one of my clients may have got 6 applicants for a position, and now we're getting 70.
Yeah.
So it's kind of scary, and I think people are going to learn the hard way that the Great Resignation, really is kind of a dangerous thing for them to kind of get involved in some cases. But hey, if it's a poor work environment, then sure, you're going to see that.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, it always comes back to like the culture and do they feel valued and all of those things. And like people quit their jobs because they don't like where they work. At the end of the day, right? Like there's all sorts of outside influences to that.
Yeah.
And pandemic obviously was a big one, but at the end of the day, people quit their jobs because they don't feel valued or they don't like the work. And you've got to find a way to, if you want to try and retain employees, maybe it's something to look internally.
Yeah. And wages are important too. I mean, some people leave because they can get it better, and some people leverage their job just to hop to another job, to get a sign-on bonus and those type of things. So those things do happen still with a portion of the workforce, but many of it is they're just not happy, right? They just don't feel like what they do matters either. So.
Okay, that was a big one that I wanted to talk quite a bit about, but here's a tough one. I'm gonna challenge you a little bit because I want you to get into my psychology. I want you to be my psychologist here for a minute.
Okay, happily. Yeah.
Why do, and I'll say because I don't want to throw anybody else under the bus. I don't want to say we because I don't think.
I've got my own issues.
Yeah. But why do I struggle, or why do I get frustrated with HR? Why does like going into a meeting, and again, it might, every answer to every question I answer or I ask might be culture or feeling valued, but like why do I stress out about meeting with HR? Why is there an answer to that? Is there a good answer to that? I don't know.
Yeah, well, hey, if I got called into the HR department, I would stress too a little bit. So I'd be like, what does this mean? Because most often the HR department or the HR manager isn't calling you in to say, we love the heck out of you, man. You are so wonderful. I heard that you did this, and I just wanted to personally thank you for what you're doing for our company.
Yeah.
And I just think this is amazing.
Every time they go in, they're getting it's like when you're training a dog or something. It's like every time they go into a room, they get yelled at. They're not going to want to go into that room anymore.
Right. So they associate HR with discipline and termination. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone gets a meeting on their calendar put on there without any really notice or information, backstory to it, then they freak out. It's like, and I would too. But a lot of what we meet about here in HR, when I'm meeting with these individuals, most of it isn't about discipline and termination. It's about, how are you doing? We've set some goals. Do you feel like we're supporting you on those goals?
Yeah.
It's a check-in to see if they feel like they're being supported and engaged. And that's honestly like 80% of the meetings we do.
Yeah.
And then we do have to have those talks from time to time, and we coach the person up or coach them out, which is my philosophy. Coach them up and coach them out. They may find that this isn't the right fit and such, and they learn that on their own, and they're like, I probably got to go somewhere else. So it's just, I get it, because there are some HR departments that really aren't very, that don't think they're very friendly and fun. So the stigma's real, and
No, that's you hit and you answered it in a good way. I think you're right. I think there's past experiences for me with HR I never was getting called in to ask about how things were going. I was called in because they felt like I didn't do well on a phone call, or they felt like they were doing a performance review and they felt like I didn't upsell enough to customers. Like it was never, I never went into a situation like, hey, this guy just wanted to say thanks for what I was doing.
People would be shocked if that happened.
Oh yeah, and that's what's it's so sad about. Like at the end of the day, you're supposed to be human resources. You're supposed to care about people.
Yeah.
And
people first.
People first, right? People first. People first consulting.
That's right.
that's a great place to be. No, I just think I think you hit it right on the head. The majority of the time people are getting called in, it's not, at least it's not received in a positive way. So you've got to find a way to help people see it in a positive way. So that's awesome. I don't want to keep you for too much longer, but I wanted to dive in a little bit specifically into the restoration industry. So obviously the majority of our clients here at Spot On Solutions are cleaning and restoration contractors, or they're somehow involved in the service industry. You have a client, Restore Right, with Kenyon. You help do HR consulting for them. What are some things that you think, now that you've had some time to work with Kenyon and help them kind of develop some systems there, what are some things that you think are important, or why do you think a restoration contractor should work with an HR consultant? Obviously, most of our clients are small enough, they probably don't have the funds to hire someone full-time to be their HR department.
Yeah.
But why do you think it would be advantageous for a restoration or service-based contractor to hire an HR consultant?
Yeah, good question. Number one is turnover.
Okay,
so service industries, restoration companies, they generally have higher turnover. And that's just inherent, right? There's some things you just can't get away from.
Yeah.
They're just going to have higher turnover because of the nature of the beast. But there's also turnover that happens within these companies
that shouldn't happen.
That really can be avoided. And that starts with when an employee is first interviewed or vetted for the job. And I know there's desperation to hire and hire. Like, I just need a body. Bring me someone. Give me someone now.
Yeah.
Very, very dangerous, right? And maybe you can get away with that for a little while, but you can never make that your hiring strategy. Yeah. You have to take the time, and it doesn't take a lot of time, but take a concerted effort to really vet the employee to see if they will be a good fit. Because what happens when you bring on the wrong employee is then you're dealing with employee issues, and then they're affecting other employees, well-being and engagement and productivity. And then it just gets really messy. And so then you're in this, it's just almost like this cycle, this quicksand that's just kind of spinning you and bringing you down. And you're always battling that. So a good HR consultant, I think, can help put some tools and processes in place to really vet the employee. And then once they're hired, we don't just throw them in on the job. Don't just throw them there
and hope they figure it out.
Again, treat them like people. They're not machines.
Yeah.
Let's have them learn about the company. Let's have them meet people. Let's have them, give them a plan. And there's a process that's not just the legal requirements of getting paperwork signed, but it's the people requirements of helping them feel welcome and that they know who they work for and they know what we stand for. And we're going to reward not just you, taking out that sheetrock and stuff, but we're going to reward you for how you do it, the attitude you bring to the table and how you affect others. And we're going to bring you in and actually compliment you. So we meet with employees, and this was never done before, is this whole hiring process. And then we have the 60-day evaluation, and we meet with them even before then. And we have standards we meet, we see how they're doing, we coach them, we get them the support. And so I believe that our turnover, not only is our turnover reduced, but we're finding stronger candidates. We're building people from within and finding better candidates. So that's just some things,
Love it.
It's not like it's perfect there all the time, but people are getting used to that type of that way of doing things, and I think it's having an impact. You have to ask Kenyon though for sure, but he's still paying me. So I don't know. I guess it's something good.
He hasn't fired you yet, so it must still be working good.
How do you fire the HR person? Right. See, that's the other question. Like, this is the beauty of being in HR.
Oh yeah, you can't. You're not going to fire yourself.
You have to go through HR to fire anyone. So I'll just be like, nah, give that guy a break.
He's fine.
He's just a little lazy. Me.
Oh, that's great. No, turnover is a huge challenge, and you're right. It's a challenge in every industry, but it seems like the service-based industries deal with it a little bit more. And they're probably probably gonna have a slightly higher turnover than everybody else, but you can mitigate some of that. Mm-hmm. Mitigate, big word in the restoration industry. Good word. By having some processes in place with how you vet people that you hire and how you train them and how you reward them, like all of those things. Yeah, and you're right. A lot of people that scale, like they'll start a service-based company and it'll start with them. They're doing all of the restoration work, or they're doing all of the carpet cleaning or whatever it might be. And when they eventually go to hire, they're just like, gosh, I just need a body. And you can't do that.
I don't blame them for that. So you can't temporarily, but it takes a while to get these things in place and to change the culture of how we hire and develop people. But it's just not a long-term solution that works and does anyone any favors. And so I think that a little effort and investment there could pay off. And it takes a while to get this going. It doesn't happen week one, but it'll happen.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Shane, thank you so much for coming on and chatting a little bit about your experience in HR, but also I think talking a little bit about the restoration industry has been super helpful for me and getting a better understanding. But
pleasure.
I wanted to finish up asking you the same 3 questions that I ask every guest that comes on.
Okay.
I didn't give you much prep time for this, so this is going to be off the top of your head.
Okay.
But first question, favorite book or podcast that you're reading or listening to right now?
Yeah. So actually, it's a book that I started reading, and we're going to be doing some work here at SOS, maybe some training, some personal development with some employees on emotional intelligence.
Okay.
So that's, just how we engage and interact with people and build relationships and what we say and how we say things. And that's something that I think is kind of missing a little bit, in the world today, because everything's on the screen or whatever. But emotional intelligence with people, those skills are still really important. So that's what I'm reading, the latest book, Emotional Intelligence.
Love it. That's something I'm trying to get better at. It's something that I feel like I've always kind of had a natural gift for, a natural ability, and I haven't developed it because I've just kind of relied, be like, oh yeah, I get how to understand people. Yeah. And I do to an extent, but I think there's so many more levels to it that I could just be better at it if I would take the time to do more research. So it's something that's awesome. That's a great recommendation. Something I want to be better at.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we'll be talking about it soon.
Love it. Second question. You wear a lot of hats now. You're working with a lot of different companies. You now own your own business.
Don't ask me who my favorite client is.
Yeah. That's what the question's going to be.
Okay.
How do you like relax at the end of a long day? I know you probably have some long days. How do you like recharge?
Yeah. Actually, I've been starting to go on a walk with my wife. And
awesome.
I never thought I was a walker.
Yeah.
She's always said she loved it, but especially with the weather being nice, I will just go for a walk and we'll just kind of unwind, and we go have some hills out behind our house and we'll do that. Sometimes I'll relax and watch my favorite sports team, but that stresses me out because they're not very good. So that doesn't help me relax. I need to do sports teams.
Much. Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, spend time with my kids.
Oh, that's great. No, we had a guy come on a few episodes ago named Justin Sifford. He works with a company called Wylander that helps restoration companies hire. We're very similar to kind of what you do. Mm-hmm. And he talked about having white space in your life, like having the time to set aside and just like shut your brain off. And a walk's a great way to do that. Yeah. Watching television, just shut your brain off. And some people really have to like force themselves to do it. It can be hard, especially for business owners to do that. But I think it's hugely important. If you could just find time every day, if it's watch an episode of a Netflix show or go for a walk for 30 minutes, like something to just shut your brain off and have some white space.
Reset.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. You've been doing this. You've been in the HR game for 12 years now. Mm-hmm. If you could rewind to the beginning of it all, what's one thing you would tell yourself?
Ooh. I would say try not to be everything to everyone. So meaning, and this is true for management. If you're in a leadership position, I think they look at you and you're the HR director. You should be able to do this. You should know this. You should know this. And there's a time where I kind of tried to sometimes pretend that I was really good at this, or I really knew this, or I was an expert here. And what I've learned is that it's okay not to know everything about everything. And so, just rely on those people. Surround yourself with really good people that they're kind of in areas where they're good at areas where you're a little bit weaker, and let them go, let them flourish, let them go, and it doesn't make you look bad. No one expects you to know it all the time. So you may say, that's a good question. Let me get back to you. Or, you know what? My coworker here, she's really great at that. Yeah. Let me introduce you to her. Great. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, totally.
Sometimes as an owner of a company or a leader, you kind of think that I need to know and do it all. You don't. Don't just focus on what you're really good at. Leverage that, but then get people in place around you that can kind of fill in those holes and let them go. Don't micromanage them, right? Just let them go and grow and build them, and it's going to be the best thing that you've ever done.
Oh, that's great. You do not have to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
That's some great advice. Shane, thanks again for coming on. Really, really appreciate it.
You're just saying that.
No.
Oh, you did it for you.
I mean,
it was fun.
I have to say that. I'm obligated by HR to say
yes,
that.
Thank you.
No. I really appreciate you coming on. I think you've given some great insights into who you are and, your career, but more importantly, I think you've given insights to people to how to better themselves, better their businesses. And that at the end of the day, if the podcast does nothing else but help a few people better themselves and help their businesses grow, that's a win for us.
Yeah, so, my pleasure.
Yeah, really
Thanks
appreciate it. And we hope to have you on later.
So. Okay, I'll do it again.
Thanks, Shane. This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe on any major podcast platform or check out our website at successonpoint.com.